Hello everybody, this is Jurassic Adventures, and in today's video we are back with another repaint and custom, this time on the Hammond Collection Triceratops. This figure has really great sculpt and paint, but one downside is the mouth is not open and it is not posable, so what I'm going to do is actually just sculpt it open like the sick Triceratops. So the first thing I did to this figure is actually just cut the lower jaw off entirely. I traced the sort of crease between the upper jaw and lower jaw, and then I cut a sort of square behind there, and then the jaw just came right off. Be careful not to cut too deep because there is a little bit of articulation, like a peg in there. And since I forgot to cut down the joints, I'm gonna do so just right now before I sculpt. It's mostly the legs that need cutting down, but you can do a little bit of the tail and neck if those need to be cut down so there's no scraping. Here you can see me sculpting the tongue inside of the lower jaw. I also had to sculpt back the beak because when you cut it down there isn't really that distinct point. Here I'm just taking the back of the toothbrush and sculpting all of those ridges you see on the roof of the mouth. And last for the sculpting was just texturing up the putty that holds those two pieces together. For this project I used green stuff putty, and I use it a lot because it's nice and rubbery and also gets really flush on these figures. For priming, I already primed this thing in gray paint. I just skipped that step in the video because if you watch any of my other videos, you'd know that I prime pretty much everything in gray. For the underbelly, we're just doing a tan color. It's almost like a mauve type color, and we are just dry brushing that all over the underbelly. For the base coat, I used a nice saturated warm brown for the majority of this figure. Then I went in with some dark brown and did a lot of patterning. Here I'm going in with some green-gray just to get that patterning that shows through on the sick Triceratops, because this was on the original Triceratops before it was all covered in mud. I do regret using this specific shade of green-gray though, because it was a little bit light and also a little bit green, so maybe a little bit of a darker gray tone would be better for this patterning. To enhance some of the beautiful detail on this Triceratops, I put a dark brown wash all over it, and then I wiped it away with a paper towel just to make it a little bit less intense on there. But it really did the trick of sort of muting down that gray-green and also bringing out all that detail. I noticed that the lighter brown tones that are a little bit more saturated weren't showing up on this figure as much as I would like, so what I did is I just dry brushed it a little bit with some lighter oranges and reds. I then base coated the horns and the beak in a dark brown color. I also did the nails in that same tone, and I just dry brushed a little bit of lighter gray brown onto there. I then dry brushed that same sort of color on all of the osteoderms that cover the figure. For the mouth, I just put a nice purpley flesh color and then gave it a nice flesh wash later. I dry brushed the horns lightly with a bunch of grays, tans, and browns just to make it so that you could see all those cracks and details still on there. The first tone for the eyes is going to be a light pink color. Then with a really fine detail brush, I went in with a little bit of red to give it sort of that bloodshot look. Off camera in the center of the eye, I put a dark brown circle with a lighter brown circle inside of that, and now I'm putting the black pupil. And lastly, the real hold your breath moment is that little white dot just on the side of the pupil. Typically I don't do many effects, but I thought UV resin would look really cool on this thing since it's supposed to be sick and it's real glossy and sort of globular. So what I did is I mixed up a little bit of paint with the UV resin, and then I applied it on there to kind of give it that sort of foamy, poisoned look that you see on the mouth of the sick Triceratops. Then of course I cured it with some UV light, and other things I also added were tears and snot dripping from the nostrils. And then last but certainly not least, we did the gloss coat over the eyes, the nostrils this time, and then also the inside of the mouth. And that, guys, is it for the sick Triceratops from Jurassic Park. If you guys enjoyed this video or found it helpful, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. This is Jurassic Adventures, and I'll see you in the next video.